This is session number 35 for Manav Vyavhar Darshan English reading sessions. And today's session will be Ankit here from Manav Teerth. He will be continuing from the point where Mridu didi left on the last it last Tuesday. In fact, we didn't have any session on Saturday because of the Shera. So so now, I mean, Ankit Bhaiya, we all know, and he brings in a lot of energy, uh, and these sessions are also an opportunity for all of us to actually listen to each other, and in some ways connecting the dots for ourselves in the process. So so welcome to you, Ankit Bhaiya, and please lead us through the session. Maybe you would like to say something before you start.
Yes, Bhaiya. Hello, Rakesh Bhaiya. Hello, everyone. Good to see everyone here. Good to see Sanjeev Bhaiya also. Hello to Raghavaji and Nitendra and Manju Didi, as I read the name. Yeah. Hello,
Hello,
audible?
Ankit. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So thank you for this opportunity, Rakesh Bhaiya. And the English translation work has been happening a lot. I keep hearing about it from Rakesh Bhaiya, Sanjeev Bhaiya, and I've been wanting to participate in it. I've not been able to do it as intensely. So this opportunity comes at a good time. It's also interesting that I did my first shiver in English, and after that I did everything in Hindi, and now I'm going to do this session in English. So there's a bit of a strange dichotomy that I used to think in English, and now I've read the Darshan in Hindi. And now, as I'm going through the literature in English, I feel like translating my head to Hindi and then back to English. So it's a very interesting thing happening. So I hope I'm able to do justice to a chapter on justice in terms of language.
I mean,
But
just for my understanding, because I'm also doing it in English, is there any
yeah.
difference in reading between English and Hindi? Because you did everything, read and everything. I mean, will there be a difference if you do it in English or Hindi? Do you see any difference?
Very tough to say as such. I do feel that my first shift was English. I think definitely in the initial time, it's easier to at least get or hear the workshop for the first time in a language one is more familiar with. I think the key connection is between word and meaning. So if we think of meanings in the language we are used to, it's faster to relate. Though I feel I'm also a great example of that. Once meaning is clear, I think then the words can be easily picked up as well, because my Hindi was not that strong. And though I'm a South Indian, but I lived a lot of my life in the North, but it was largely spoken. I had no intellectual reading of any sort in Hindi before. I still can't read any other Hindi. I can't read a newspaper so easily, but I can read the darshan books easily. So I also feel it's a good example of how that if the meaning is clear to you, then you can go back and identify and look up the word. And I think language and grammar follows it as it is. Babuji's grammar is a different thing altogether. Yeah. So I think initially it does, but after some time I don't. I think it's okay. It normalizes. Right. Okay, so thank you again for having me. I was unfortunately a bit unwell last few days, so that's why I think because of Dashera, and then I requested Rakesh Bhaiya. I was quite unwell, so he very generously agreed to push it by another day. So thank you for the patience, and that has also got pushed. It's been very nice going through all of this in English because Manav Vyavhar Darshan itself is a book which requires so much to decode that to also write it in English is a Herculean task. And I just can imagine the kind of effort which Rakesh Bhai, Sanjeev Bhai, and everyone else is putting in. So I want to just pass on a lot of compliments and hats off to this effort. And I'll start my sharing with that. But just a very quick introduction. My name is Ankit. I live with my wife Mridu and two kids right now on a campus called Manav Teerth in Chhattisgarh. I've lived a lot of my life in Delhi, and by profession, I'm a documentary filmmaker. And but education became a passion. Been working with a lot of social organizations for many years on environment and organic farming and other things. And there was a desire to, to correct society, make it better, until I came across something like Jeevan Vidya, and then naturally gravitated towards that. Probably the most sustainable change you can create is through change of the mindset. So got interested and started looking out for people in education, because felt everything else was not leading to any solutions. And when I came across people in education, met some very nice, very incredible people, but I kept feeling that somewhere I felt that maybe the view wasn't as complete. And then I thought I'd actually become negative and lazy, and I was unnecessarily critical of everything and everyone. Then Jeevan Vidya came as a respite, because then I felt, okay, I think there were some gaps which I was not able to point out. But I think it was a life turning moment in some ways, at least, to hear a 7-day workshop. A lot of my questions got answered. I still remember the day of my evaluation. At the 7th day, when I gave my evaluation and I was writing my Mulyankan, I felt that 3 questions which I was getting put out by in the last 2 years, which I did not know existed in me and were causing me the confusion I was going through. Uh, they just came right in front of me like that, and I felt I'd found those answers to them in the workshop. And since then, a journey started. It's been a journey of, gradually, I think some amount of commitment has increased. And over the last few years, I was in Delhi with Sanjeev Vyar, helping Somya with the happiness curriculum. Prior to that, just doing some workshops. Now living in Manav Teerth, we're running a hostel based on of the school we are, and I help run a youth program where youngsters come for 1, 2, and 3 years to study and practice life based on Jeevan Vidya Darshan. Part of a bigger group. Have been very blessed to have good people constantly around and creating platforms where we can, participate and feel more purposeful in life. So I'll just share, like every other facility also shares. The sharing is largely my interpretation and my understanding of it. Some places I'll see if language becomes a bit of is not a botheration, but please share wherever anyone thinks that there's a different interpretation there. Yeah, and I'll just share the conclusions till now I have understood. So just to start off, I think there's a notification going on. I'll just switch it off. Right. So the chapter which has been done by Kyori Ben and by Mridu was Justice in Humans, chapter 15 of Manav Vyavhar Darshan. And it's a very interesting chapter, which is followed by very powerful chapters of Poshan Shoshan and the other 2 last chapters of Manav Vyavhar Darshan. And as I was going through the chapter again, I can hear myself. Is it me?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to say something. Would you be sharing the screen?
I will, yeah. I'll share the screen. Yes, we Yeah, I'll just open it as I start. Where can you allow sharing for participants?
1 minute. Yeah, I think the only way for doing that was to make you a host. I just did that.
Okay. उसमें एक option आता है ना, allow multiple participants to share.
I'll learn it from you.
Okay. All right. ठीक है. I hope the screen is visible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Good. In case my audio just goes down because of any internet issues, just let me know. I'll put my video off then. Right now, the internet seems fine here. Yes. So to go back to the chapter, I felt as I was going through the chapter 15, which Mridu and Theory earlier did, and the entire chapter, I think, revolves around the aspect of justice in humans, and a lot of the pages we're going through right now is also about just behavior. And what I was gathering as I was reading was that a lot of the chapter is about that what can cause just behavior in humans, what are the aspects which can lead to just behavior in humans, and what can just behavior in a human being manifest as in society, in terms of maybe education or culture, or an environment of security, an environment of trust. So I see a lot of how Babaji has used just behavior and looked at its causes and also its manifestation. That's how I feel a lot of the chapter or the pages I'm going through is written. So I'll start off with the Anubhuti Mridu left from. I'll start from the one after that. The people, wealth, and prestige are. I'll read from here. I was reading it from down below. Yes. The people, wealth, and prestige are assets of family and the indivisible society. Their right usage and success is accomplished by adhering to the policies and customs that promote fulfilling relationships with justice, by doing occupation, experimentation, and inventions in lawful way, and by doing exploration for the human purpose. Therefore, the use of people, wealth, and prestige needs to be for the prosperity of the family and the indivisible society, and not in the individualistic sense. It is possible to foster sentiments of mutual cooperation, collaboration, and coexistence in family only with such just behavior, which will strengthen trust amongst people and lead to eradication of opportunistic mentality. So, for some time, we've been seeing these two concepts of opportunistic mentality of behavior and just behavior, which we Hindi were seeing Avsarvadi and Nyayavadi. And opportunistic behavior is coming from the notion, which is also a sense of delusion, and coming from the notion, and in a sense of delusion, one of the most fundamental conclusions one has is that one is the body. That is one key aspect, I think, of a sense of delusion. And in that, one looks at material very differently. So I feel till knowledge, till clarity, the understanding of material is very complicated. When one thinks of oneself as the body or only as the body, then one's relationship with material also changes. Because then material only is looked at as a sense of satisfaction, is looked at as a source of happiness, is looked at as a sense of respect or pride, and achieving that as a sense of glory. So all values, they also seem to then become dependent on material achievements, on material feats, and things like that. So, and eventually, opportunistic behavior or a mindset like that will lead to what we undergo or see in life as accumulation, as hoarding, as war, as conflict. Though there are limited resources, but if one, there are finite resources on earth, but as we have seen over the years that if one understands what their physical needs are, what their material needs are, and that material needs are one part of one's life, a bigger part is knowledge and clarity and relationships and values. So then the load on material automatically subsides. It becomes regulated, it becomes normal, and uh, and that just behavior leads to a different thread altogether, whereas opportunism otherwise will lead to a different thread. And in a state of delusion, the three righteous desires of people, wealth, and prestige, they also uh, get down to again how we look at ourselves as material, how we see people as a method to get more material or get more goods, wealth also as a medium for that, and prestige also as an aspect of that. So the first point Babaji says at this point is that people, wealth, and prestige are assets of family and and individual society. So we have been hearing this line very often that wealth is not something which belongs to an individual domain. I feel that's true because wealth is neither created by an individual. An individual is born in a family. And even if we're creating wealth, what are we actually doing? We are just working on existing resources which exist, like water or wood or anything else in nature. And we are working on that. We are refining it, we're bettering it, and we create something. We're able to generate wealth out of asking remuneration for the work we've done on nature. So we're not creating wood, we are growing wood through seeds which already exist, through trees which already are there. So people, wealth, prestige, if we see are actually, so if we see wealth actually is an asset which belongs to the family. It belongs to society. A very small part of it is needed actually for one's well-being, but a big part of it actually is needed for societal well-being and societal good or social progress. And same is also the case of prestige in people. But in a sense of delusion or ignorance, we can see that we look at people, wealth, and prestige to only propagate oneself. So there's something which I came across some time back, which I was thinking that right now, even if I'm doing Jivamrita sessions, am I establishing myself or am I establishing what is right? Even before Jivamrita or anywhere else, there's a question that every time I'm doing something, I want people to know if I'm doing something well. Maybe I want money for what I feel I owe money. I'm doing well and people should pay me for it. Or that people around me, they should stick by me, or maybe I have that support of people. So I feel that in people, wealth, and prestige right now, a critical thing is that right now I would also call myself in the stage of ignorance or in the stage of delusion. That in this case, we are often looking at using wealth, prestige, and people to establish ourselves. Whereas for a person who's rooted in knowledge and justice, they will be establishing what is right, what is correct. So establishing oneself is vis-a-vis establishing what is right. So there, a sense of individuality is subsumed in the larger thing. But right now, here, it doesn't matter if I'm right and wrong. I want to establish that this is Ankit or Ankit has done something, and so on and so forth. So that's what Babaji just brings up and says that that's why that people, wealth, and prestige is accomplished by adhering to the policies and customs that promote fulfilling relationships with justice. So at a couple of levels, Babaji has looked at here that that the asset of people is fulfilled only by promoting fulfilling relationship with justice, uh, and wealth by generating wealth, which have in which there is social equality which is maintained, in which the balance with nature is maintained. That's why the line experimentation and inventions in a lawful way. Here, the lawful way is referring to natural laws, whereas earlier fulfilling relationship with justice for people is referring to behavioral laws. And prestige needs to be for the prosperity of the family, you know, uh, and for doing exploration for the human purpose, you know, for taking human good, human progress ahead. Only then we can see that it is possible to foster sentiments of mutual cooperation, collaboration, and coexistence in family only with such just behavior, which will strengthen trust amongst people and lead to eradication of the opportunistic mentality. A very simple example of this is that many people hope that as the family gets more money, as it gets more prestige, as it gets more wealth, they'll also be peaceful, they'll be happier. But it's strange that most families talk about that the moment wealth came into the family, they felt trust went down, they felt deceit increased, they felt that they felt that divisions were happening. People wanted the property to be bifurcated. So what does this mean? This means that actually that there's a very strong relationship between being rooted in just behavior or being rooted in something else or an opportunism. And there is no way that people, wealth, and prestige, their righteous desires can be rightly utilized uh, to satisfaction unless one is rooted in just behavior. And it's only then that people, wealth, and prestige will manifest as trust amongst people, as amongst collaboration, cooperation, and coexistence. I also feel that, yeah, we'll come to the next paragraph and then I'll speak of another aspect. That just behavior leads to elucidation and inspiration of ethical guidance and intellectual resolution at the societal level. The study which enables realization in the omnipresent omnipotence leads to revelation of policies for righteous utilization and security of resources. The path to successful societal living is paved by teaching that enables understanding of humaneness and higher humaneness, resolution that enables realization in truth, practice, and work, that enables prosperity and development of dedication for following of traditions. So Babaji has further taken up this part, and in that we can see in this paragraph he's addressed a couple of issues. One is that there is something called just behavior. One is that how just behavior manifests uh, as ethical guidance in society. So one is to be rooted in just behavior. One is to see what being rooted in just behavior will do to one's tendencies, which Mridu discussed earlier, will do to one's thoughts, and also how it manifests. So there's a big question of, you know, of ethics and morality. In fact, till I did my Jeevan Vidya workshop, I did not hold, in fact, not till my first workshop, but even much later. I think maybe even 7, 8 years, 9 years into, I think, Jeevan Vidya, I never valued morality or ethics very highly. I felt that ethics and morality were very confusing, were very convoluted, and were also very subjective. Everyone had their own sense of what ethics and morality is, and I felt it's a very subjective thing. Uh, till sometime in Adyan, it hit me that ethics is complicated till it does not have a common ground. But if you and me also have a common ground of ethics, it still is not sufficient, because the only way ethics can be universal in nature is when it's rooted in truth. And that's when I felt during the process of Adhyan that ethics and morality, naitikta, which we often use a word for, that rooted in truth is the only one which can be universally acceptable. Otherwise, ethics will always be a debate and be subjective in nature. So just behavior here is what will lead to an understanding of ethics, and thus an environment of ethical guidance in society. and and similarly, we can also see that how that realization in omnipresent omnipotence in Vyapak leads to revelation of policies for righteous utilization and security of resources. So another thing is that we do aspire for guidance. We do aspire for to understand what is right, what is wrong, but we don't have a good basis for that. We do aspire for things to be preserved in society, for things to be rightly utilized, to have security, but we don't know how to go about that. But I think here Babaji is giving us a way and saying that I remember while I was working in the environment for a very long time, I worked in the environment sector, and it was very interesting, very ironic to see that the weakest ministry in a government is actually the environment ministry, and the strongest ministry in the government is actually the commerce ministry. And they were, even if there are blatant violations by many industries in different parts of India on environment, uh, if there's enough revenue being generated, uh, the port or the government will have a very tough time trying to shut down the industry. So what does this say? That it says that we may have a policy, but it is not strong enough. And even if there's a policy, there's no will for that. This point of what Babaji is saying, that the study which enables realization in omnipresent omnipotence leads to revelation of policies for righteous utilization of security resources. I interpret this as that at the level of anubhav, at the level of knowledge and realization, we come to while experiencing Vyapak or omnipresence and omnipotence, we see that every entity which we're submerged in, that in completeness, in Punta, every entity also is striving for completeness. That realization, I feel, makes us look at everything very differently, makes it look at every entity very differently. And because in completeness, everything is submerged, hence every entity, be it plant, material, animal order, or human order, is also aspiring for completeness. And that completeness can be seen in different places at different things. But one clear conclusion with completeness is that every entity uh, is a harmony in itself and aspires to be or participates in a larger harmony, which we also call as Swayam Vyavastha Vyavastha Bhagidari. I think that point, when we see that every entity displays these two innate characteristics of being harmony in self and harmony with the outer world, I think that leads to a very key conclusion after that, that one's living has to be in a way where you let that entity also live in the order it is living, and you continue with in a coexistential relationship. So I think this also, that's how Babaji also came out with the sutra, which we often hear, is that live and let live. So I think that view of existence as coexistence, I think that it's only that seeing that level of harmony and participation in nature, when I feel policies and the will for righteous utilization and security of resources will come sustainably. Till then, we'll have many things. We'll have the willpower. We'll feel guilt, but it will not manifest as a steady thing in society. Further, Babaji says that the path to successful society living is paved by teaching that enables understanding of humaneness and higher humaneness, resolution that enables realization in truth, practice, and work, that enables prosperity and development of dedication for following of traditions. Here, I also feel that with people, wealth, and prestige, something which Babaji brought up earlier, I feel there are two conclusions. In a state of opportunism, we feel we have unending cravings for it. So we also end up exploiting nature. We end up exploiting humans because we are only interested in how much wealth or material we can generate. And we can have another extreme where we may feel that material, we may feel maybe very detached, very disenchanted, or we may feel that we don't need that material. We may become very minimalistic in nature, or we may also undergo guilt of having been part of a very consumeristic setup and to reduce our footprint. But I think both are not sustainable. Both are not grounded in understanding. Both are not grounded in just behavior. That is bordering on living in opportunism, but feeling bad about it, feeling very miserable about it. So I think Babaji is very clearly separating everywhere that just behavior has to be is what enables a much more a better living, and the difference between just behavior and opportunism is knowledge. So in this the second paragraph, I feel the second anubhuti, what is happening here is that also that just behavior, how it manifests in society as ethical guidance and knowledge as righteous utilization and security of resources. Further on, if we go that there are more possibilities for individuals to find inspiration for the development from a successful society and systems, because it is natural for lower value to gravitate towards the higher value. Moreover, the conducive environment, opportunities, and means are always available in a successful society for everyone to engage in experimentation, practice, occupation, and study to align them towards this. So, in this, a key point Babaji has raised is that how do we see as what is successful societal living, and and even now we can see it's a very simple thing that we know that society is more impactful than us. We have little children and we're very worried about them. We are worried about the larger media impact, worried about the larger environmental impact. So we can see that society has a higher ability to influence individuals. Some individuals may have a higher ability to influence society, but mostly we can see that society has a higher ability on most individuals to influence them. And that's why we're also seeing is what Babaji is saying is the relationship between a higher value and a lower value. So if there's a just society, then how does it manifest? It manifests as a just environment where there are higher chances of individuals then becoming impressed, becoming inspired, and wanting to live accordingly. And this also creates more opportunities and means for people. And right now, we also see that that's why, because the environment doesn't exist, people don't have much faith. When we talk of how we want to live on the basis of Jeevan Vidya, people often are not very sure. They're like beyond the walls of the Adyan Shivir or the Parichya Shivir. If we go out, the world is not like this. So that means that the higher value is not giving that value which actually is required. So there is doubt, there is question, and there is maybe even some that this is maybe something even impractical. But the doubt is based on the fact that because either I am rooted in justice or the environment is rooted in justice. We need either of these two factors for just behavior to manifest, to go further on. So either the individual has to go through knowledge and create an environment, or it is available to me as an environment, and then I am able to thrive in that. We'll go to the next one, which is that justice itself is legislation, legislation itself is system, system itself is knowledge, wisdom, science, knowledge, wisdom, science itself is
Bhaiya,
law.
can you actually scroll up
Oh,
from
sorry, there. Sorry. I'm reading through my notes now. Yeah, so I missed that. Yes.
yeah, and
Thanks.
also please use the this text because there might be small changes in the
Sure, yeah, I'll do that.
yeah.
Yeah. So justice itself is legislation, legislation itself is system, system itself is knowledge, wisdom, science, knowledge, wisdom, science itself is law, law itself is regulation, regulation itself is justice. So here again, when we look at justice, we look at the understanding of what are laws of human behavior, which exist in nature. Understanding justice will lead to a legislation where justice can be ensured. Right now, we can see that, as very often has been quoted in a lot of workshops, that there was a very famous judge who came to a shiver and said, that in court we're not doing justice, we're giving decisions. So there is a separation between justice and decisions. So justice here means that or means that there are values, there are feelings which are understood and which are mutually fulfilling, which are available to both, and they're also been transmitted amongst two people. So understanding of justice will lead to a legislation which can ensure justice can happen. Like right now, even if you look at a lot of the legislation or a lot of even of our justice system, it talks a lot about what is wrong or what is not a conduct which is acceptable or where one feels and one becomes an offender. But it doesn't very clearly define what is justice. So we can see that there is a lot of understanding of what is injustice, but there is not of what is justice. And even at a personal level, very often in relationships, we can see that we feel that something was not right. I did not feel that something went correct between two people. I felt a sense of injustice. When people asked me that what went wrong, I said, I don't know what went wrong, but something was wrong. How to set it right? I will respond, I don't know how to set it right, but something was wrong. Now, this is sensing injustice. But sensing injustice and knowing justice are two very different things. Sensing injustice is something which happens in opportunism in a state of delusion. But knowing justice is something which happens in after a state of knowledge when one is rooted in justice, and it's only then when one is able to make a legislation, a set of humans or a human being, which is rooted in justice. This will manifest itself as a system where five dimensions of human living will be there. They'll be thriving. They'll be mutually fulfilling, and there'll be coexistence. This system will ensure that knowledge, wisdom, and science, which is Gyan Vivek Vigyan, thrives. It continues because if we see that, then that actually before justice will also be knowledge, wisdom, and science in a human being. So this system will lead to more human being living in knowledge, wisdom, and science. This knowledge, wisdom, and science, when more people are living in it, this itself is the law. By law, we can also see that it is that people now will be living in law with the three laws, with the laws of natural laws, of behavioral laws, and intellectual laws. And when they're living with laws, this is why what we see is actually regulation. Regulation is, which this entire chapter also is a lot about, is that regulation we often refer to as something being external, but here regulation is something more innate. Regulation is more based on laws which are behavioral, intellectual, or natural, or and natural. So with knowledge, wisdom, and science itself is law, and law itself is regulation, and regulation itself is justice, where it is mutually fulfilling. So I think this is a loop where I often read many of these sutras by Baba when he comes back to the same word as manifestation, that it manifests as justice in legislation, in system, then amongst more people who are living with knowledge, wisdom, and science, and as they are living in it, they are understanding the laws, they're living by those laws, they are self-regulated, and then they're also living in justice. This is how I read that how these lines manifest. We go on further. Babaji further talks about that the utility of a director, legislator, scholar, philosopher, and disseminator is the usefulness of a director, legislator, scholar, philosopher, and disseminator is indispensable in inspiring and fostering dedication to justice, legislation, systems, knowledge, and law, respectively. So till now, we can see that Babaji has spoken about just behavior. He's spoken about how it manifests. He's spoken about that how just behavior can now manifest even as a system, even as a legislation in a society where the code of conduct is codified, is there as a document, is there as constitution. And here, when we read these words of director, legislator, scholar, philosopher, disseminator, we also look at different levels at which society will work. I initially had a very idealistic view of a Jagrit or a realized society where I felt everything will be okay, everything will be fine. I'm still opening up my visualization or my chitran to what the society will be. But there'll still be different roles to see. There will still be people who will still not have been realized, who will need knowledge, who will need a just environment to live better. There will still be people who may not have understood completely but are in the process of doing so. There will still be children
Where your voice froze.
I think some link problem may be there, bhaiya.
Yeah. Ankit bhaiya, your voice has frozen, so you may want to read this again, or maybe uh, not use.
भैया एक रिक्वेस्ट कर सकती हूँ कैन इट is it possible to increase the size of the font? It's very fine and I'm finding it challenging to read it on screen. Is it
Yeah.
possible to enlarge it?
Yeah, he can do a little bit on that as well. Yeah.
Oh, acha, oh, he's handling it. All right. Yeah.
Actually, it looks like Ankit bhaiya dropped and he's going to join back.
जी. By the way, bhaiya, some of the insights or explanation which Ankit bhaiya has given are, like and very thought-provoking. Like the way he talked about Commerce Ministry and Environment Ministry.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, very, very simple, very easy to observe, and very true.
Very right. Actually, what I feel is that Babaji had once said that you make this content available, then those people who have understood it will take it further, right? And that is what seems to be happening. That uh, this is big. This translation will is coming alive by the experience of the people who have understood it, right?
Yes.
So probably, I mean, one normal approach is that you make certain some document, and whatever someone next is doing is something a little less than what you had actually produced. But here, what is happening is what we are producing, Ankit Bhaiya is taking it to the next level, and each
And
person. Mm.
and he's back. So good.
Sorry, yeah, I don't know why the net went off. Yeah, some law not at work. Yeah, I hope it doesn't happen again. Yeah, am I audible?
You
Yeah.
are audible. Bhaiya, can you share the document
Yeah,
and
I'll just do it again. Bhaiya, can you
and
allow me? And Bhaiya, I think when you press share, you have a button which says allow multiple presenters. That
ऐसा क्या?
that arrow next to the share, that small arrow, if you open it, there are multiple
Where?
options there.
Uh, because when I am going to allow the record to I don't know.
On the share button at the bottom, there's an arrow, a small arrow next to it.
अच्छा,
उसमें आप you have two options. One participant can share at a time, and multiple participants can share simultaneously.
अ, ठीक है. अभी तो I think you
ठीक है. Okay.
basically do this.
Okay.
I'll
No, I'm just
figure out.
worried if I'm the host, then we shouldn't get logged off. ठीक है.
Okay.
And there was a request, Ankit bhai, in your absence, that if you can increase the font size maybe from
I will
100%
do
to
that.
25, it will be good.
Right. Yeah, I'll do that. Hello to everyone else. I didn't say hello to earlier. I didn't really. I'll just open that document. Okay. Is this fine, Vijay?
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
definitely better. Yeah, it's
Great.
very good.
Okay. Great. Okay. Should I just pause now in case is there any clarification I left out or something else just someone wants to clarify till whatever you shared till now?
Mm, yeah. Anyone has any questions, or shall we move further? I think here we can move further in case there is
Right. Okay.
anything. We'll stop you.
So the usefulness of a director, legislator, scholar, philosopher, and disseminator is indispensable in inspiring and fostering dedication to justice, legislation, systems, knowledge, and law, respectively. So here I find that the different terms and the people here, it's been a bit of a still an open query for me. To be very honest, I'm not sure if I can place them exactly as they are. Very often, I would think that are they different levels of consciousness, of humane and deific or complete human being, or are they just different responsibilities? So I will just go through what I feel their attributes are right now. So the first is director, Vyavasthapak. Director is the individual who possesses expertise in legislation and rules, adheres and enforces ethical conduct, and has the ability to reform the deviance from misunderstanding. So I find that, like I shared earlier, just before I got logged off, that I perhaps had a very idealistic view of a realized society. But I think even there'll be many things at work. There will be children who are getting born who need to be realized. There will be people who will not still be realized. Uh, our imagination does get a bit limited here. So director is someone I feel who has one is expertise in legislation. Now, expertise very often is looked at as something as intellectual, but here expertise is looking at something as being lived in legislation and rules. So expertise in behavior cannot happen till one has understood those laws of human behavior. And Babaji constantly saying that intellectual resolution or human behavior cannot happen without practice, without living in them. So a director is already at the level of that who possesses that expertise, not intellectually, but in a lived way. And behavioral laws have to be lived to be understood as well in the legislation and rules. Adheres and enforces to ethical conduct. Here, I think is another very interesting thing because today we have a lot of directors who enforce but don't adhere. So it's something which is part of one's living, part of one's practice, part of one's being, part of one's conduct. So one is adhering to a kind of a living legislation and rules and enforces that ethical conduct and enforces the ethical conduct, which is, I think is the hallmark of this particular director, that has the ability to reform the deviance through understanding. Right now, many people at the end of the workshop are often saying that, okay, what the Prabodhak is saying makes sense, everything is fine, but how do you make people understand? What do you do with people who are terrorists or people who are militants or people who are aggressive or people who are maybe murderers? How do you deal with a wide range of people or even maybe people who are in my life whom I may not have a very physically aggressive relationship with, but I don't think we're at peace. I don't think there is a peaceful way of making them understand. So we have a question mark that is it even possible to make people understand, reform or change through understanding? Right now, our faith is not to that. I think the director has that trait. The Vyavasthapak has that trait. He's lived and rooted in justice and has the ability to also reform people through understanding. If you go to the next one, legislator is the individual who is proficient in legislation and rules with scholarliness and personality to clearly determine the policies for balance in the prevailing environment and climate. I think the legislator, apart from this, has another eye for that. Where is it that society stands today? Where is the people are standing today? Where is that we need to be? And how do we ensure that we're in the right course? So the legislator is proficient in legislation and rules, has a scholarliness, which we'll read before as well, has the personality in terms of the ability to communicate, to dialogue, to take people along, and to also determine the policies for balance, which I think is a critical aspect in this. Like I do feel that a lot of where all of us will get tested in some time is that Babaji has written very well about what the Jagrat or the realized society is. The question is, how do we mark the points or the baby steps from here till Jagrati, in terms of education, in terms of policies, in terms of culture, how will we do that? So every few years, I think we're going ahead, we're able to manifest something in our families, we're able to manifest something in maybe in small collectives or amongst few people or in an organization or a school. And eventually, I think as we all progress, as we all also become realized, we develop knowledge, then we'll come to a stage when we're also able to legislate. We're able to make policies which we're able to ensure that people and larger collectives are able to move in that direction. The next is scholar. A scholar is the individual who, along with humane conduct has the ability to impart the enlightened study of resolution that is capable of eliminating discord amongst humans. Everyone has to be exhibiting humane conduct. That is something we see as a minimum of a person who is part of ensuring orderliness in a society. So, with a scholar who, along with human conduct, Babaji is saying, he has the ability to impart the enlightened study of resolution. So, here enlightened study also refers to that for the person is enlightened and has the ability to also, pass it on to other people and illuminating discords. The difference between scholar and the thinker, I think, if you look at it, that the thinker is the individual who, along with humane conduct, is capable of presenting resolution for illuminating discords amongst humans. I think is the ability of is usually the word enlightened or nirbrant in Hindi between the scholar and the thinker. I think I think both are operating at a level where they are dealing with people in proximity, also looking at things at a societal level. Scholar will also be part of maybe creating educational systems, which will be also which will look at creating setups where people can become evolved human beings. And I think thinker is a person whom I feel has a resolution, and I feel will also be working more in proximity and also at certain levels of society. But one hallmark I feel of a thinker and a scholar are actually that they're both resolution based. Right now, our ability to think or to be scholarly is different from our behavioral selves. Right now, we can be scholarly, we can be thinking in some dimensions, but we can be very poor behaviorally in other dimensions. And our scholarliness or our ability to think is very different from our internals, our actual states, because these are the level of thought only. But here, scholar and thinker are individuals who are rooted in understanding, and they are resolution based. I think that's a very, very important aspect, that their focus is resolution, and there is no difference in their thinking ability and their behavioral ability. They have been able they will be able to manifest just behavior in their lives, and thus also able to identify where there's discord in people around them or in society, and based on their abilities and their participation and the roles they're playing, they're able to bring that to the correct right. uh, then there's a disseminator. A disseminator is the individual who presents ethics, character, and values in a creative way to build trust amongst the general public towards it. I feel the disseminator will be a person who will have maybe a control and command over maybe arts or crafts or literature or media, and a wide range of human expression through different forms of media, and use them to able to disseminate what is worthy of thinking. Like right now, we often feel that a lot of people say that we don't have enough good material for children. That means the material being disseminated is not of good quality. It's, either going abroad towards maybe sex, or going towards, words which are not good to use for children, or going towards wealth. So disseminator is also looking at creating material in a multidimensional way, which is good for public to see and to move towards that direction. And public or praja, every person who lawfully adheres to humane conduct is regarded as public. Here is interesting, Babaji has not written every person who is living or is rooted in human conduct, but adheres to it. So there could be people who may not be realized, but they feel that this is valuable, this makes sense. So this brought me my attention to something. I myself have been very intellectually or thought-based person for a long time. So I feel that till something goes through my filter of what is worthy of doing or what is good, I will not do it. I will not live it. That has been a benchmark I've lived with for a lot of my life. Last few years have been very different, very also different, having just lived in Manav Teerth and trying to see how we can create a culture of on based on Jeevan Vidya. And now I've suddenly started valuing the ability to live with trust, but perhaps even without intellectual clarity, which definitely is more important in children as they grow up. And like now, I feel I'm at a stage where sometimes I'm not sure if I can see that why is this happening. I'm not sure if I can see that we should be doing this. But I feel it's the right thing to do, or maybe I'm trusting someone else's judgment and I'll go ahead with it. So I do feel praja or public here refers to people who have trust in the people who have formed what is the order for them. They're not being governed. It's an organization, and they may not necessarily have the clarity right there and then, or may not have evolved on the basis of knowledge. But there is trust and there is adherence to it. That I find is an important point of praja here. Babaji writes at the end, only thinkers and scholars can be disseminators. Yeah. There is often a
Bhaiya,
question.
before you go forward, can you one more
Yes.
time explain the difference between the scholar and the thinker? I thought they seemed very similar to me. I couldn't get the nuance of the difference between the two, the thinker and the scholar.
So, to be very honest, I feel I'm not very clear of the difference between them also. I'm only clear only to a limited sense. I feel there are some things which to me also will evolve more with time. Rakesh bhai, I can add if Bhaiya has something here.
Yeah, we also argued a lot, or we had some discussion. So one thing
Right.
that seems to be that Vidwan is the one who can impart understanding to other, to make
Right.
other person also wise, while the vicharak or the thinker is the person who actually is capable of presenting resolution. Like for example, a thinker would basically suggest that how should the country have its education policy, right? But the scholar would, or the vidwan is the person who will be able to make other person understand. वो दूसरे को समझदार बना सकता है अपने आचरण से. So both of them are rooted in the conduct, but one is actually, I would rate vidwan at a higher level than vicharak, right?
Hmm.
I feel the same way. And we really in times like this, we resort to very rat-based behavior where we try to look for very small clues or breadcrumbs and see how Babaji's discern both of them. And in the scholar and thinker, I can think of enlightened as the word to separate, these two as a small crumb Babaji has thrown for us to figure it out. So just the fact that enlightened has been used with scholar, like Rakesh Bhai said, I feel the same. I feel like like a person who is at the level of anubhav or realization can get a person till the level of both or understanding.
Hmm.
So I think a scholar is at a higher level of understanding than a thinker. I think that's one difference. And because of that, there'll also be their level of how they're operating the society will be a bit different. I feel
Got it.
that is one difference I can see right now. Yeah.
Ankit bhaiya, one question from my side also.
जी भैया.
So you actually mentioned that earlier you used to be the person who would, everything needs to pass through your reason and
Internal.
logic, and then only you will actually do. But after coming to Manav Teerth, uh, your approach has become a little different, where you say that you would follow something because you want to follow it, not necessarily because your logic or reason says this. So do you see this as an improvement? And if you see yes, then how?
I see it as an improvement and also as a sign of peace between many people. There's an interesting thing which has happened to me. I feel that because I've been also been an individual in terms of I've not never been a corporate employee. I have filed my own taxes. I've bought my own insurance because I've been an individual in terms of working as well. So I've never been part of a system. The last system I was part of as a dependent in the armed forces because my father was part of it. I also feel the strain of constantly thinking for yourself every time now very burdensome, there, very, very burdensome. And in fact, when I'm talking to many youngsters, in fact, I don't know, last few years, I sometimes when I'm in a state of dilemma, I call up my dad. I said, Dad, it seems that I should do one of these two things. What do you think? And he says, do this. Earlier, I would ask and then question and then debate. Did he say that? Uh, I don't know if I can articulate it completely, but I also now see a certain sense of relief of just letting someone else take a call and just going on that. Of course, one also knows that it's not decisions which one will lose sleep over. But I do feel I do see the bane of having trying to think through everything when one is also living with a limited worldview, with a limited imagination. And I feel sharing that load of thinking with others is also, I think it also leads to nyaya in some way. It is also giving space to other people to play a role in your lives. And it's not just courtesy. Like very often, Shishtata or courtesy is seen as just largely a very polite way of conversing with others. But I think courtesy or Shishtata, I feel, is the genuine view that the others have a role to play in my life, and and one and one cannot live without that fabric. So I feel it's helped a lot of my relationships, and I also feel that maybe one is overthinking in several ways, and also it's just a practice of just going along. You think for a little while, maybe it's not necessary that everything's so clear right away, but then you go along. You trust someone who's around you. Of course, this is also happening in an area of trust. When there's some very clear decisions, you have to make a building, then I will not go along with someone who's just saying something right away. I will not be so blind about it. But I do see that where Babaji is making a relationship between Dhanpun Vichar and Nyayapun Vyavhar, I do feel that that just being in relationships and walking with them, I think clarity also follows. Earlier, I was looking at clarity to lead me through relationships, but now I feel living through relationships is also leading to some clarity. So the other part is also happening, where living in relationships is leading to clarity, vis-a-vis just only looking at clarity to live in relationships. I hope
बहुत
I was
बढ़िया
trying to
है.
make it clear.
No, thank you so much.
That I feel has also happened with while working with many people around me, in Jeevan Vidya and other places as well. Ji. Okay, I'll go ahead. Yeah, I can share more on that, but I don't know if there's enough time. So just to ensure that we also have done other parts of it. Okay, I'll go ahead. The rule and the ruler are manifestations of delusional human tendencies. There is no possibility of a ruler becoming a thinker or a thinker becoming a ruler, as there is no scope or opportunity to think holistically while ruling, and there is no scope or opportunity to rule while thinking holistically. A thinker perpetually nurtures systems while a ruler consistently exploits them. Yeah, I think there's something which is quite self-explanatory in some ways. I just feel there is one interesting thing which comes up here. Very There are two words in Hindi, shasan and vyavastha, which we looked at here as rule and being organized. So someone had said, that a ruler and someone in basis of JV who's part of the organization, what will be the difference between them? Or let's say the difference between a thinker and a ruler here. With a ruler, the evaluation is always one-sided. One person is able to share what he or she feels is the situation. Both people are not able to share it. But I feel in a relationship based on justice, or in a relationship or in an organization of society based on what a thinker is leading or doing, there will be space for mulyankan or for evaluation from both sides. And I think that's what makes it also a coexistential society rather than just be a one-way thing. So if you see a rule and a ruler, that we've had feudal kings, we've had democracies, we've had all kinds of setups till now. And Babaji is saying that they're all manifestations of human tendencies, because the crux of the rule of the ruler is that you are ruling, which presumes that you are able to think better for others and not just for yourself. Either you're an embodiment of the god, or could be many other things. But this person can't be a thinker, because thinker is rooted in a very different worldview. Whereas the ruler is in a very individualistic worldview. One can also develop a very high sense of arrogance in a situation like this. Whereas the reverse also would not happen. A thinker would never rule, because that person would have been rooted in justice and cannot presume of he or she being able to rule. By rule, it also means that you're also deciding for them. You're also thinking for them. And another thing is that how a ruler understands, how a ruler, what kind of mindset a ruler has, and what kind of behavior a ruler has, is very different from the mindset and the behavior of a thinker. And the objective of a ruler and the objective of a thinker are also very different. For the ruler, the objective is his legacy, or his reign, or his family. Whereas the objective for a thinker would be for tradition of a parampara to continue, not necessarily one person or one thought, of a humane order, of a humane parampara to continue. For the rural, that may not be a factor. So I will go ahead. The next one is that when an individual attains the potential ability and receptivity as humane consciousness by following the path of resolution for living in orderliness, that is indivisible society and universal system, they become equipped with resolution of problems and behavior, which in itself is source of their satisfaction. Such a person becomes devoid of perturbance. This itself is grandeur of humaneness. So in continuation of what Bhavaji is saying earlier is that we've spoken about just behavior, we've spoken about thinker and a ruler. And here is saying that when the person develops this ability of and reaches the state of humane consciousness, they become equipped with resolution. So I think here we can understand that resolution is very different from problem solving. Problem solving is refers to a particular issue or a particular event or a particular problem or a particular conflict, where resolution refers to something else. I think a resolution is a state where having seen the existential laws, having experienced existence, you are seeing everything, you're seeing its laws, and thus any kind of deviation or any kind of things which is not fitting in anywhere. Because you're seeing laws, you're seeing harmony, you're seeing innateness. Anything which is not fitting in, you know how to set that right. That I think is resolution. And that view is much bigger than the problem. And that's why I feel I've heard somewhere, and I think it makes sense that the resolution always exists. Solutions come up when problems come up. So here I see that I was just saying that path of resolution for living in orderliness, individual society, universal system, that one becomes equipped with resolution of problems and behavior. And it's not just solution finding, but it is resolution finding, which is a source of satisfaction. And right now, we also feel that, when we are more relaxed within ourselves, we have resolved to a certain level, we do feel satisfied. And we also feel we are clearer and we're able to find solutions to problems much faster than when we are not in a state of resolution. So now we can feel that in temporary levels, but after knowledge, we can see that is at a level of continuity. Embracing just behavior itself means striving and experimenting to accomplish resolution. Just behavior leads to accomplishment of resolution as follows. I feel another thing here is that that to be also in a state of resolution, we also agree to change ourselves. One is that I want to be in a state of resolution. One is that I want to be there, but I'm not doing anything towards it. But here it is that embracing such behavior means that one is striving, one is serious, one wants to change, one wants to reach a state of resolution. And I think here Babaji is saying embracing just behavior is also implying that that the person is able to understand what actually just behavior is. One is able to discern. So even if I am deluded, I'm able to see that what is just behavior and what is opportunistic behavior. And then identify people who are living with just behavior, identify people who are at a higher level of excellence than I am, emulating or copying or embracing them. And then eventually this behavior becomes a part of me. All activities performed by humans depend on thoughts. Therefore, skillfulness in human activities is possible only from intellectual proficiency. Intellectual mastery is possible only from behavioral proficiency, and civilized articulation of values is possible only from intellectual mastery. Study of reality itself is intellectual resolution, and realization in truth itself is bliss, which is the pinnacle of success. So here I find that we keep hearing this line that human beings are fundamentally thought-driven, or Manav Multa Vichar ki kai hai. So what it means is that fundamentally any kind of change in a human being starts at the level of thought. And like I shared in my introduction earlier, when I also was working with societal change, and when I came across that the only sustainable change in a human being is at the level of a mindset. You can more than by changing the mindset of a person. Because once something takes home or space in a person's thought, then it will manifest in that person's every dimension. So for even an unrealized person, there's three dimensions that work. There's a dimension of thought, there's a dimension of living, of behavior, and there's a dimension of work. So here's what Babaji is saying, that skillfulness in human activities, which is nipunta, is possible from intellectual proficiency. So even in our activities or production or engaging with others, intellectual clarity and proficiency of why we're doing it manifests as that. Similarly, even for behavioral proficiency, intellectual mastery is required, and even for civilized articulation, this is only possible from intellectual mastery. So, civilized articulation here does not mean that I'm speaking to impress, but I think civilized articulation means that I'm speaking to direct. I'm speaking to communicate. I'm speaking in a way that articulation is coming, which is able to communicate the bhav or the feeling I'm feeling towards a person, and is also able to direct that person's thoughts in a certain direction. So I think civilized articulation of values is a is a great state to be at if one is able to do it. And here, what Babaji is saying is that we're all thought driven, we're all vichar driven, and if work happens there, then it will manifest in these three dimensions of our behavior, of our work, and also in our articulation of values. Study of reality itself is intellectual resolution, and realization in truth itself is bliss, which is the pinnacle of success. So here, intellectual resolution can be achieved only with the study of reality. And when we achieve that is when we're feeling bliss. Go to the next one. Humans have undertaken all occupations with the sole aim of achieving prosperity, engaged in all behavior with the underlying intent of fostering justice towards an awakened society, expressed humane values by way of language with the desire for the comprehensive resolution and development of humankind, pursued study for realization and verity, all with the ultimate aspiration to attain the restfulness. Restfulness is resolution. I think here what Babaji is communicating is, that what are the causes which lead to a just behavior and how will just behavior manifest. So I will, if I live in an environment of just behavior, it will manifest inside me, that will lead to resolution. If I work on resolution, it will manifest as just behavior, and then it will also manifest it for others. So Babaji is saying that we live in a multidimensional environment, and thought and behavior both are, complementing each other, both will work on each other. Here Babaji again is going on, that what are the different actions we are living at. So one kind of action we are living at is the level of all work, all occupations is to achieve prosperity, and all kinds of behavior, it is to ensure that there is justice, there is fulfillment with other human beings. And again, civilized articulation, which Babaji was saying earlier, the idea of that is to be able to direct human beings towards either my feeling or direct them towards knowledge or peace or harmony. And that's why saying that the desire for the comprehensive resolution and development of humankind. Here, a point I would like to talk about a bit is restfulness or Vishram. And I find restfulness a very fascinating concept here. I feel when we look at restfulness at the level of the body, then we look at a point like my body slept, now my body is rested, now my body is tired. But when you look at restfulness at the level of Jivan, then I think we look at it very differently. So uh, there are these two words of Shram and Vishram. Shram is working, is being active, and Vishram is restfulness. So the body needs to be in a constant state of work, in a state of, to be in a state of fitness. But the Jivan needs to be in a state of restfulness. And by restfulness here or Vishram, I feel it implies harmony, alignment. So within the five Jivan Kriyas, Jivan Parivesh of Man, Vritti, Chit, Buddhi, Atma, there is alignment and harmony between both of them, between every Kriya, Man, Vritti, Vritti, Chit, Chit, Buddhi, Buddhi, Atma. And I think that is what is Vishram here. And that is harmony within. That is what is also known as Sukh Shanti Santosh Anand, and that also is a state which, after knowledge, is in a state of continuity. So here, two things are coming out. One is that intellectual clarity or resolution and the feelings of peace, bliss, contentment, and happiness, they are going side by side. Harmony between an alignment of Jivan Kriya within themselves is leading to peace, is leading to happiness, peace, contentment, and bliss, and also leading to knowledge and intellectual clarity and resolution. So they're both going hand in hand. I think Babaji is separated very well, that, or linked very well, how clarity and behavior, our behavior and clarity will go hand in hand. It's not And intellectual clarity will happen first, and then just behavior will happen. And I just really like the aspect of restfulness here, and and I think whenever we experience restfulness within us, it is that something within us has aligned. Either a man and vritti has aligned, or a vritti and chitta is aligned. And I think that is an aspiration. When I started observing that state of restfulness inside me, that became an aspiration. And that I think here is what Babaji is referring to, an ultimate aspiration. And that state of restfulness is not a state of indifference, which perhaps we could conclude from maybe earlier traditions. It's not a state of being, it's a state which is a very responsible state. It's a state of high clarity, of high performance, where a person can be working at universal order, and still be in a state of rest within. Okay, I'll go to the next one. This inclination in humans to consume more than what they produce proves to be exploitative of society. It is nothing but opportunism, whereas just behavior leads to a surplus of production, ensuring both the fulfillment of societal needs and the fostering of social justice. In contrast, opportunistic behavior inherently involves the misappropriation of wealth, adultery, and infliction of harm on others, for which inhumane mentality, language, expression, and exhibition are imperative, furthering delusion and materialistic indulgence, which has been making humankind imbalanced, disillusioned, and tribulated. Though it's quite clear what Babaji is saying here is, and but I also feel that few things just to highlight here. We're also short on time, so I thought I'll just go through this very quickly. That how opportunistic behavior will manifest. It will manifest firstly as confusion and conflict within the person as it is, and also it will manifest as some kind of exploitation with people, and eventual maybe even hoarding of resources or misappropriation of a certain kind, and even damaged relationships, like Babaji has mentioned above. So, a very so for me, this key goes back to again looking at us as human beings, and if we view ourselves as human beings, everything to do with material becomes an aspiration, and for that, then everything else follows. Like if you look at a lot of the medieval and the modern history in the world. Uh, it seems that in places where the worldview became of man being material in nature and nothing else, or matter, and thus everything else is has material been aspirational. A lot of societies moved to different parts of the world. While traders went out to get more maybe spices or anything else and get it back and get more wealth back to their countries. And these mercantile ships were eventually protected by government navy to ensure that they're protected and not attacked by others. And gradually it led to not just protecting the ships, but then conquering lands and then protecting lands and from others. This is one common example of how living in opportunism, our behavior we will feel that we want more than we can consume. There is insecurity, and then there is hoarding. uh, there will be exploitation, what Babu just mentioned, and it will lead to what we are saying as the three things of misappropriation of wealth. There is more with some, there's less with some. It will lead to eventually adultery, not being able to be faithful in relationships, and inflict harm on others. And this which leads to, the human mentality, language, expression, and exhibition, which Babaji is saying, which are displays of someone who is deluded. So I think here it's quite clear what Babaji is saying, but opportunistic behavior will eventually lead to this. And we can see this as so many examples in society. That even, for example, every time onion prices goes up, we know that someone has hoarded it somewhere, and that's where the prices gone up. I remember reading an article many years back where there was a village in Maharashtra, I think called Lasselgaon, where three families by hoarding onions for about maybe 250 crores, and of course the rest of the country paid for it. So all this is manifesting as from this thing of that only material happiness is the only form of happiness. Further on, Babaji says that that humans are born with the right to make mistakes. So even if we're living with a sense of opportunism, we will be making mistakes. Humans are born with the right to make mistakes alongside the opportunity and means to do right. So I think few things Babaji said here is that even if we are deluded, we are living with opportunism, we are living with ignorance. We have a right to make mistakes because that is the law. If we don't know, we will go wrong. But we have the opportunity. At any point of time, we have the opportunity and the means. And the means, they exist inside us. They exist as the Jeevan Kriya inside us, which has the ability to understand. The existence means that there is always existence which is there, which can be understood. And there is also some faculties inside us which guide us, which is bhas, abhas, which when if we are going incorrect, if we're going wrong, we pay attention to ourselves, we can get a sense, are we aligned with what is right? Do we think we're doing something wrong? So these means exist. Even people outside exist. Here, I think the key thing is that what choice does a human being make? Does he want to continue with the right to make mistakes, or does he want to move to not making it and living better? Accordingly, the contribution of systems in education is essential to cultivate judiciousness and natural dedications towards justice in humans. So, thus, as what will happen on the top, accordingly, systems and education will happen, which will cultivate uh, a sense of judiciousness or a sense of understanding amongst people or amongst youngsters or amongst children, and have a natural dedication towards justice. Uh, Here, I think a very important part is that the importance of environment. That, like Babaji also said before, few people will be able to maybe move ahead and look at very non-conducive systems or environments and identify. But for most people, what is very easy is or very natural is that the environment is available for them to do it. Like we just look at something as simple as that today's environment, it does not cultivate justice, it does not cultivate justice in humans or protection of resources. A simple example is that it's cheaper to pollute and it's more expensive to conserve. So this kind of environment will lead to more opportunism, will naturally cultivate non-judiciousness or cultivate more sense of profit. So it's very critical that the environment, the system gets made of education of these systems where this thing gets cultivated. That's where I think certainty will happen. That's where definiteness will come in. As systems and education come in, the definiteness of people living with judiciousness, that will increase. That will happen more. Attachment and opportunism is delusion, which is nothing but an imposition. I'll do both the anubhutis together. Absence of delusion itself is the cause of justice. Absence of delusion paves the way for achieving resolution, mental strength, happiness, dutifulness, affection, devotedness, peace, contentment, simplicity, enthusiasm, joy, and bliss. All these aspects are inseparably connected. So the cause of attachment in opportunism is delusion, which is nothing but an imposition. I think this starts off of seeing oneself as the body. One of the root causes is that, and that is one big part of opportunism. And in the absence of delusion, we can see that one is exhibiting a certain kind of behavior, down as what Babaji mentioned. So absence of delusion itself is the cause, which is when we say there is knowledge, there is clarity. And it also paves the way for achieving resolution, mental strength, and these words ahead. So we just take up one by one the word and see. So when we're living in a state of clarity, we're living in a state of knowledge, or let's say absence of delusion is the level of anubhav, where a person has complete knowledge. That is when one achieves resolution. And I think here the state of resolution is continuous. It's eternal now. The state of resolution would have increased, but not become continuous till one has achieved anubhav. So resolution here, as some other find it as the fulfillment of why and how of having the holistic understanding to perform an activity is referred to as resolution. Here I feel that that in every situation one has the answer to what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. One's view is bigger than where one is living. One has the view of an existence of reality, and thus one has the ability to find solution to whatever situation one comes up in. There's also mental strength, which is manobal. The meditative state of mind, or the mind that is capable of evidencing understanding, is referred to as mental strength. I remember hearing a session on this from somewhere, and I think one of the facilitators mentioned how manobal, which will come to a head, mental strength is such an important aspect. And apparently, when Babaji met Abdul Kalam as the president of India, one of the first few things he said that that till now you've lived in Aprad, or what you've done is not correct, or you lived in Aprad. being in the president's house and saying that to the president of India. Of course, we know that Kalam would have been a very good human being to take it in a certain context. But where did that strength come from? I think where did that, and I think when that one has that strength, the others can feel it. It comes out as moral courage as well. So, and that comes back with resolution, that comes back with clarity. And a very small aspect of mental strength, I feel I also have seen it in my life in bits and pieces. There's this corporate style that when you want to tell someone that what they're not doing, you first give them a positive, then you criticize, then you give them positive. But I feel that there is this Hindi line called bhav ki sthirta, or the steadiness of feeling. I feel when there's resolution or with the steadiness of feeling, it gives you very different strength. You can tell a person, even meeting eye to the eye, when your feeling is very steady, and you can also tell the person that you disagree. And what is also mental strength. It is, and I think with mental strength, people will be able to even criticize or disagree, but with a very good feeling, with a very steady feeling. So I look at it as a very strong thing, and I feel that mental strength is what will push people and even their intellectual, their mindsets, their limited conditioning, it will crack through them. That will play a very big role, this mental strength. And it's a meditative state of mind. Here, I think the meditative state of mind means that there is knowledge which is coming from the higher kriyas to the 4.5 kriyas. That here is what is the meditative state of mind here. It has understanding and it is evidencing it. It is manifesting it. It is manifesting it. There is happiness, sukh. The perseverance to do to justice is referred to as happiness. We it means what it says that it's also the level of satisfaction to be able to live in justice. Is a satisfaction. To be able to constantly execute justice also is a level of satisfaction. Like right now,
Hey, your voice is frozen.
I'm able to live in it and I'm able to meet it out to the other person. That I think is the perseverance here, which is referred to as happiness, that it's my satisfaction of being able to live with a certain conduct. आप कुछ कह रहे थे?
For a moment, your voice had got frozen, but now it is okay. Yeah.
Okay. Hey, it's 9:24. I'll try and see how much I can finish as soon as possible. Do we do a hard stop at 9:30 or we can go a few minutes past it and finish it?
I think we can do a few minutes past and finish it, but in case you feel that you'll be more comfortable completing in the next session, that also is fine. So I think we can do some 10, 15 minutes more in case that
Probably.
helps.
I think we'll finish today itself. That will be easier also. The schedule will continue.
Okay.
So I think manifesting from this resolution and mental strength is happiness itself. That one is not dependent on the other to be in a state of to live in relationships or to be committed to it. My behavior now is indifferent of or not connected to how miserable or how good the other one is behaving. It is operating from my own state, and that is a sense of satisfaction. I am not deterred or not perturbed by anything which is not good outside. It's also as dutifulness, which we say kartavya mein nishtha, bearing responsibility itself is dutifulness. One of the first things I feel as an outcome of the Jivnidya Shivit for me was that I felt a very natural sense of responsibility. And I felt that whenever something becomes clear, I feel we naturally feel responsible. And here, responsibility is not an externally put duty, but I think responsibility is that just seeing that how we are connected, seeing what is the natural way, what are the natural laws of doing anything, and fulfilling it. So there is a responsibility towards my happiness. There is responsibility of the happiness of the others. So firstly, when one is happy within, one is also able to have a sense of and being able to look at others outside. Not able to even see others. So I think out of happiness also comes a sense of responsibility, which Babaji is saying here is dutifulness. And I think this responsibility is not with the baggage, but it's with a sense of satisfaction. It's a sense of ownership. That I think what is Babaji is referring to here is as dutifulness, kartavya mein nishtha. And there's also affection, sneh, which is the acceptance with respect to justice itself is affection. There's a very nice Hindi word for it, which is nirvirodhata, which is lack of resistance, which I find is a very powerful thing. That here affection also refers to that having been rooted in justice and in clarity, there is towards every human being I meet, there is or I'm interacting with and I'm living with, there is a feeling of affection. There's a natural desire to be part of that person's life and to participate in that person's life. There's also devotedness or anurag. The inundation experience from the absence of delusion is referred to as. I see devotedness here naturally as uh, as a manifestation of that affection itself. So when we look at, we're often looking at bhakti or something like that in a very traditional way. But here I find it is a kind of an unconditional shift towards what needs to be done. I think that is devotion. So as there is clarity and there is devotedness, now every part of my being and effortlessly is dedicated, is devoted towards creating that harmony outside, which I found within. I think here is what I see that as devotedness. The inundation experience from the absence of delusion. It manifests in my behavior as well. There is peace, there is shanti, the state of mind devoid of pain. I think I look at peace as that between the outermost two parivesh of jivan of man and vritti. I feel when there is no conflict within them, there is peace. When man is governed by vritti, I feel there is peace. When there is clarity of what one needs to do, which manifests as the clarity of desire, then clarity of thinking, and then clarity of how it is to be done. I think that is peace. So here there is peace because there is clear purpose. There is affection towards other people, and one is living with it. That's how I see it as peace. There's also contentment. There's santosh. Contentment is lack of the feeling of lacking or the state of mind that lacks a sense of lacking. So abhav ka abhav, as we read it in Hindi, here that lack of feeling of lacking, which is resolution and prosperity. So I see that in right now in a state of delusionment, we may not know what is shanti, but we know what is ashanti. We don't know what is peace, but we know what is not peace. Similarly, we don't know what is contentment, but we know what is discontentment. So I feel discontentment comes from two things. One is not knowing what one wants, not being clear with what one wants. And secondly is even if I feel I want something, I have a desire. Maybe I want to be awarded the national award as a filmmaker. I get that award and I'm still not satisfied. So that means that one is, I don't know what I want. And even if I feel I want something, that is not actually what I fundamentally desire. So that's why, despite having that, that's a conditioned understanding, that's a conditioned desire. So despite achieving that, I'm not feeling I'm satisfied or I'm content. So contentment is coming from the clarity of what is fundamentally human goal. I think it first manifests from knowing that what my human goal is, what was it that I want, from the state of mind of clarity, and then also comes from being able to also manifest it in others. So I think with knowledge comes contentment. I see contentment also as a relationship between of harmony and alignment between chit and vritti, between the ability to contemplate and sakshatkar and chintan and thinking. I also see it as a place where these two kriyas align. And then there is love and or prem, the final result, closeness, alikeness, and abidance of divine human and deific human is referred to as love. The combined expression of kindness, grace, and compassion is love. uh, we have love is must have come often here before, and I don't know how much to go in it more, but I do feel that I've understood love more from the expressed value of love, which in Hindi is Ananyata. I'm right now forgetting the English word for that. Shakil, what's the English word for Ananyata? It's slipping my mind right now.
I think it is non-dualness.
Non-dualness. Right. So when I read Ananyata or what they are saying is non-dualness, and when I understood its meaning, And I think its meaning means that you don't see anyone as yours or someone else's, which in Hindi is there is no apna paraya right now. So I think in a state of knowledge, in a state of being able to see the entire existence, uh, in being able to see myself as a Jivan, I'm also able to see others as Jivan, and with a human body and me with a human body. So I think being able to see everyone as yourselves, I think that leads to a state where you're not feeling now a lack of liking or disliking, not seeing someone as your that that state. I feel is the that feeling is this feeling of love. And here, I think another thing Babuji is also referring to is that for getting proximity, closeness, aliveness, and abidance of Dev Manav or Divi Manav, of divine human and beatific human, as referred to as love. Uh, this is something I feel I'm still figuring my head on, but I feel that the one aspect of love is to feel it at the level of Anubhav, and the other is that when one starts expressing it as kindness, grace, and compassion in living, which I think happens after humane living. So after at the Manav Pad or the humane living, when one is established at the level of family, then one starts living with Daya, Kripa, Karuna, or kindness, grace, and compassion, and that's when one is also expressing love in mutuality. Till then, one is feeling it. Here, I think one is expressing it in relationships. And followed by this are the two express values of effortlessness, sahajta, and simplicity, saralta. Effortlessness, as we all know, is the expressed value of guidance. The state of harmony in mental, ideological, and contemplative states upon awakening is referred to as effortlessness. The state of mind that is devoid of mysteriousness is referred to as effortlessness. Uh, I think whenever there's something we all have experienced, that whenever we have received guidance from someone, we can also see that our behavior towards that person is very different, towards someone whom we feel is deeper or has more excellence than ours. So at that point of time, for a small point of time, I can feel that with my behavior with that person is effortless, is sahaj. There is no gap between my inner being and my outer self, between my sthiti and my gati. So here sahajta here in a more refined way, that at a mental level, ideological, at a thought level, every aspect of my inner being there is clear transparency between them. There is effortlessness and there is nothing hidden. There is nothing mysterious. There is no conditioning. There is no lack of knowledge in between them. This is something which is also experienced at this stage. And then there is saralta, which is simplicity. The natural behavior upon awakening is referred to as simplicity. To physically, verbally, and mentally evidence the laws with determination. Behavior devoid of show and pretension is referred to as simplicity. So I see value of guidance, where internally I feel that all dimensions, internal dimensions of me are aligned. There is no mysteriousness. And saralta is when at my living, at my sthiti gati level also, there is no duality. There's no gap between how I am internally and how I express myself, or how I project myself and how I am internally. There is no gap between them. That is simplicity or saralta, which is also an expressed value of glory. There is bliss. Realization in coexistence is referred to as when one has realized existence completely. It is refers to as bliss as Anand. That is when one also experiences completeness or Purnta, accomplishment of comprehensive resolution itself is completeness. Like I shared earlier, that we are all immersed in a reality or an existential reality which is Poon by itself, which is complete by itself. And being in that, there is a natural desire for uh, us to also reach state of completeness, Poonta. So here is when we feel a state of Punta, when we one level of Punta, when we have accomplished knowledge or resolution completely in us. I see this Punta as Kriya Punta right now, and eventually as Achan Punta as well. There is absence of delusion, there is Nirbhamta, when there is nothing which is now hidden, everything is clear in existence. justice, dharma, and truth-based behavior, language, feelings, resolve, and realization is referred to as the absence of delusion. These are also, I think, states which are progressive. I have often understood Nirdhamta at the level of Divya Manav or divine human. That's where I think of it as. And then the thought itself manifests in the form of feelings, language, and behavior. And then in a state of Nirdhamta, in a state of completeness, a state of resolvedness, the person will manifest also in the form of feelings, language, and behavior. What will get manifest is which is of completeness. Behavior, feelings, and language become restrained and refined by attaining the potential of realizing justice, dharma, and truth. Here I find also something very interesting that about being ashrit or being regulated. And behavior, language, and feelings become restrained. And this restraint is a very natural restraint, very natural regulation when one goes through Nyaya, Dharma, Satya, or justice, dharma, and truth. I find that now we have to restrain our behavior and feelings and language depending on the situations. It's very external, it's very situational. But here the restraint is very natural, it's very effortless, and it's also fulfilling for others. So the behavior post, there is a huge question that what is human behavior post knowledge? But I think human behavior post knowledge is of establishing the harmony which one has reached within and now establishing it actually outside. So for that, our behavior, our language, all is with those feelings and also guiding others towards justice, dharma, and truth. So it's natural that now what will be abhyas or practice based or behavior and language after knowledge. The next anubhuti is that purity of thoughts itself is meant. So all these what we discussed, all these words are values which one is experiencing when one is what Babaji is saying, the absence of delusion. That is when one is experiencing all these words, all these values. Purity of thoughts itself is mental strength. Mental strength itself is dedication towards duty. Dedication towards duty itself is resolution and prosperity. Resolution and prosperity itself is coexistence. Coexistence itself is purity of thoughts by which just behavior gets established. Otherwise, it is opportunistic behavior which has no stability. So in this paragraph again, Babaji is talking about purity of thoughts and or manobal, which we spoke about earlier. That purity of thoughts leads to the mental strength. Purity of thoughts is not thinking about something which is bad, but here purity of thoughts is then being as pure as Vyapak or seeing everything the way it is. There is no clutter, there is no delusion. That is what is referred to. And that leads to mental strength. It's coming from position of clarity. And this is what leads to responsibility and towards carrying out one's duty, which is reaching a resolution and prosperity from also ensuring that others also reach resolution and prosperity outside, which is when then the person starts evidencing it in family, in society, and in existence. In opportunistic behavior, this is not possible. It has no stability. The authority to restrain, regulate, and reform opportunism is evidenced only through awakening. Right now, we all try to reform opportunistic people outside, be opportunistic ourselves, which will not happen, as Babaji is writing here. We are now started thinking of better things, but we're also living in opportunism. And that's why we may also feel helpless in face of opportunism. But Babaji is saying here that this authority is not externally given. This authority is what one can lay one has reached. So this authority is natural to me. I'm able to reform opportunism once I'm rooted in justice. And every human desires justice from birth. The basic objective of all humans' continuous endeavor is to develop the potential, ability, and receptivity for just behavior. So there's something we're all familiar with as well, that people desire justice from birth. Babaji has spoken about just behavior in this chapter. and saying that a key thing to do, the basic objective of all humans' continuous endeavor is, be it anything from a behavior to society to production to anything, is that this can manifest in a child. This desire gets manifested as now an ability in that person and can come as a behavior. The natural behavior and the mutuality of just individuals itself is sociality. This itself is humane society. So I think at the end, what Babaji is saying is that we all desire to be expressing just behavior. We all want just behavior. If the environment is such, so a child will live in an environment of just behavior, will start manifesting just behavior, and will also find intellectual resolution alongside that. And for a person who doesn't have it in an environment, but even has access to people like us or a darshan, we look at just behavior of few people or a philosophy, and then we manifest it in ourselves and we manifest in society outside. And this is also leading to what is the understanding of sociality. And I think samajikta, I find, is a very powerful term here. It refers to, sociality refers to the the critical importance of human beings. It refers to that how human being, my fulfillment, my knowledge, my prosperity, that no human goal can occur without other human beings. Seeing that thing, seeing the coexistence on the basis of which only I can complete my goals, my human goals. I think that is sociality, that is samajikta. It is seeing the critical role of other human beings in my life. And at the end, Babaji says, may there be universal well-being. So I'll just end it on this line that this chapter has been about the causality of it, how it can happen in a human being, and the need for it to manifest in human society, and then how it can then become as human tradition. And I think the next chapter then goes on to how Shoshan, how policies, how customs can be made on the basis. We're past our time, so I will close now. I will just pass it back to Rakesh Bhaiya. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of the extended sharing as well. I wish I could have drawn more interconnections and spoken more about lived experiences, but I think sometimes just got took up by me by in explanations itself. So Rakesh Bhaiya, I'll just hand it back to you.
Divya, thank you so much. It was very lively presentation and thoroughly enjoyed it. We wish that we could actually have more sessions by you. I was telling Sanjeev Bhaiya also that Babaji had said that you just do this translation once, and those people who have understood darshan will take it forward. And and that is what basically we are seeing the evidence of, that uh, we're just trying to put the information as it is. And after that, it is the people who are like yourself, Mridu Didi, Keuri, and all the others who have actually read this, have made this alive by your experiences, your understanding of it. So many of the things we had ourselves had not really thought about while doing the translation, the perspectives that you are actually bringing in. So wonderful thing. Next session is going to be on chapter 16, and Richa from Kanpur, who is here, who will be addressing that. And so that is in, I mean, as you were saying, last three chapters, right, are in a way um, basically conclude what has been defined earlier, right? The first 15 chapters in a way are definitional, and the last three chapters are in some ways actually more like propositional, right? So wonderful thing once again. I think we don't have the time for doing the Q&A, but perhaps some other time. Yeah. So anyone wants to make any closing remarks before we close today's session? Sanjeev Bhaiya?
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to hear whatever Ankit Bhai has to say. And today also it was the same feelings which resonated in me. So great, that's what I can say. And we are all beyond time, so I'll not take much time. We can wrap up the meeting. Thank you, Ankit Bhai, being with us today evening.
Thank you, Bhaiya. Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for the patience. It's been so nice for all of you to be around here. It's been a stellar work doing the translation, and I think I've really enjoyed reading it. I could not read a lot of it, but I think it's opened a lot of doors, and I think this is a great initiative. We don't know how many people will join, but I think it's phenomenal. I hope I can participate.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bhaiya.
Right.
And so, namaste, everyone. We'll close today's session.
Namaste to everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.